Hello, and welcome to another U.S. Tech Workers podcast. My name is Kevin Lynn, and I'm going to be your host tonight, and I am joined by Rolf. Now, this is the first night in what will be a series of podcasts that will be covering a very important trial in Oakland, California for U.S. tech workers. Now, for those who may not be familiar, those who aren't tech workers, one of India's largest outsourcing body shops, TATA Consultancy Services, is playing the role of defendant this week in a trial where it's being charged on numerous accounts by former employees of racial discrimination. And TATA is one of the companies that exploits U.S. work visa programs by bringing droves of workers to the United States, displaced U.S. citizens. And TATA, as this trial, what the basis of this trial is, TATA has the habit of firing non-South Asian or non-Indian employees at a rate of 12 times that of its Indian employees. And that's, and what this trial is going to be about is, looking into that and saying, hey, is there racial bias with that company? So joining me tonight is tech worker Rolf. And Rolf is a veteran of the tech world. He has almost 30 years experience in tech, working across the country. And Rolf is trudging down to the Oakland courthouse to cover the trial for us. So when that trial is in session, he is going to be there covering it. So, Rolf, welcome to U.S. Tech Workers. As I said, this is your first day covering the trial. What do you think of the proceedings so far? I mean, what is your big picture initially, and then we can talk about details.
I thought there were descriptions by U.S. tech workers who were providing testimony today that were extremely relevant, and there were a lot of incidents that these people had been put through personally or that they had witnessed that, to my mind at least, pointed to a very decisive trend in discriminating not only against U.S. citizens, but very possibly along racial lines as well.
Interesting. Now, how many witnesses took the stand today?
Three.
Okay. And about how long was the day for the trial? Was it like a half day, a full day?
It was about 6 hours.
Okay. So pretty intense 6 hours, I'm sure.
Yes.
Now, how long do you think this trial will go on? Have you any information as to how many days the judge is looking that this will go on?
There are 2 more dates scheduled at this time that I'm aware of. And of course, that can change. It can be extended if need be. I just don't have all of the relevant information at this point.
Okay, gotcha. Now, what in the testimony really jumped out at you today, Rolf?
The fact that U.S. workers were training their replacements who were from India, and pretty much invariably, these people had come to the U.S. on H-1B visas, many times even after the start of training. So a really senior level U.S. citizen would train someone who was either in India at the beginning or possibly already on site working on an H-1B visa, and then that person would replace them. And according to what many of these people said who were TSC employees, that's TATA, they had been promised that their employment would be ongoing, that there were so many accounts that, it would be almost impossible that they would fall through the cracks. But yet, that's exactly what happened.
So they would, what do they call it? I think the term I've heard is do a knowledge transfer. And then after that knowledge had been sucked out of them, they just disposed of that employee, huh?
Exactly.
did you get any appreciation with those providing testimony as to the competency of the people they were training?
The insight that was provided was that these were frequently entry-level people, so they had no experience, possibly
Really?
even no background in IT. Yes.
No experience. Now, ultimately, so it sounded like from what you told me, they would train them remotely and then they would bring them to the United States. Is that correct?
In some cases, at least, that's what happened. But also, parts of the group that these newcomers represented were being offshored,
Ah, I
and
see. So,
possibly
oh, go ahead. I'm
the
sorry.
whole group later, because the person who was trained by the American and had been on site and everything like that could go back to India with the entire group and provide remote support that way.
Interesting. And, getting back to what you said earlier about the competency. Now, and a lot of Americans are led to believe that the H-1B visa program is something of a genius program where we're bringing in highly skilled people. But it's been my experience in speaking with U.S. tech workers who've been displaced and had to train their replacements, and the testimony today. That's simply not the case. These people really aren't that skilled.
Not from what was provided today in testimony. No, the
Interesting.
opposite of that. Yeah.
Hmm. Wow. And you heard from three people today. Will any of them be? Will there be additional witnesses testifying?
At this point, I don't have that much detail.
Hmm. I see. Was it a pretty crowded gallery at the court in the courtroom today, or kind of scant?
No, there were about 11 people total, maybe 12.
Okay, gotcha. Now, did anything else from the testimony jump out at you that you would like to share with our viewers today?
Well, one thing was kind of chilling. One of the U.S. employees who testified was a female IT worker who had 32 years tenure in a company,
Hmm.
and she had been in the same job her whole career. And the people who were brought in to supervise her when she was training and after that had made remarks. One of them, after a meeting, told her she wasn't supposed to talk during the meeting, and that was really counterproductive because she was the person who had all of the skills that applied to this project, since it was a migration from one system to another, and she already had experience on both those systems that nobody else in that room had. So that, kind of leaps out at people, I think. And then someone else, another senior level person, possibly another supervisor that you had in that experience, that whole experience, was that Indians are more technical and that Indians deserve to have these jobs because they've been oppressed for so long. And apparently, the UK was in India for a long time.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that has to do with us, though.
Well, it's funny you say that. Years ago, I was reading a book on Winston Churchill, and Winston Churchill was born in 1874. And in 1874, the English did a survey of India, basically kind of a polling study to find out thoughts and perceptions of the British Empire and British rule in India. They ended up having to stop it because the vast majority of the respondents didn't even know the British were there. So I don't know where they're getting the oppression from. But yeah, it certainly wasn't here. Now, obviously, the reason they told her she shouldn't speak in meetings was because she was a woman. Is that what we were getting at?
I don't think there was any further explanation to that remark. I guess, it's just open to speculation.
Right. And then they said, wow, for some reason, they're thinking that there's a prejudice against U.S. tech workers that they're not as technically skilled as Indians. Interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, Rolf, this is amazing to me, and this is why I'm so glad you're there covering it for U.S. tech workers. I know the people that uh, uh, sign in and watch this podcast are really going to appreciate your insights. Anything else that jumped out at you today, Rolf?
Yeah. The attorneys for the defense were doing their work, I'm sure, but it was very difficult to sit through that and to watch the U.S. tech workers being browbeaten, and I think in some cases really insulted by the attorneys for the defense, who one time specifically had no knowledge of what they were talking about at all. One of the U.S. tech workers had a particular type of cancer, and the attorney for the defense was saying that the cancer was in remission, whereas in fact, the cancer is not treatable, and it can be in a more
terminal.
Right. So at times it's not really prevalent. It's not, what would you call it? I don't know the terminology for it, but it never goes. It's always there, and the tests have to be ongoing. Treatments have to be ongoing to some degree, but he doesn't always need chemotherapy. So that was the point. This attorney was saying, since you haven't had chemotherapy for this type of cancer in 13 years, then why do you need the insurance? Why are you misrepresenting the facts that way? But he had no knowledge of the exact variety of cancer or what he was talking about at all. So it's just really offensive to see that kind of thing.
I'm sure, and as someone like yourself, a veteran of the tech industry, and particularly as involved in it for as long as you have been, you had started in a period of time when a tech job was a great job to have.
Yes.
Wow. And what's interesting too and that gets to some cultural differences where maybe the workers obviously, to me, and certainly the people I've talked to over the last couple of years who are tech workers, there are people from other countries that where there's no expectation of benefits like healthcare insurance and things like that, let alone vacation and 401ks and those kinds, retirement, pension accounts, things like that. Wow. Anything else, Rolf, that you can share with us?
Well, it really stuck out in my mind that one member of the defense legal team decided to present what I thought wasn't really a comparison at all. She used the word curmudgeonly versus gregarious, and I don't think those two things are exactly opposites. I think that,
right,
if they're talking about personality types in the tech world, they might find that there are a lot of introverted people. It's possible.
I think so. And I think introvert might be, more of an introvert personality versus
right.
Because if you're curmudgeonly, you're someone who could be a bit acidic, difficult to work with, whereas someone who might be introverted might not be that outgoing, and but that doesn't interfere with their ability to take direction or get along with other coworkers and things like that. Interesting.
I think introverted and gregarious might be opposites, but curmudgeonly to me seems a little bit different, and I just I don't feel very confident in that type of presentation using language, because it just seems like these are hyperbolic complaints or potential issues that aren't relevant, that aren't really issues.
Right. Now, question for you, Rolf: is this a jury trial or is it just before a judge?
It's a jury trial.
Okay, great. That's because I'm sure the jury is looking at this and making those same kind of drawing the same kind of conclusions you are with this. Interesting. Well, Rolf, anything else that you want to share with us?
We saw during the testimony today repeated instances of Americans being passed over and then benched but never getting back in. And there was at least one videotape testimony I actually left when that started, but it was more of the same, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, there may be an element of ageism in this too, because some of the plaintiffs are probably well over, their 20s and 30s. So there could be a number of things going on, but it's still not the kind of thing that we should have to put up with. Not that anybody should.
Absolutely. I mean, our workplaces in this country have evolved to the point where, people could, should be able to count on a livable wage, security, and the knowledge that they're going to be respected in the workplace. And,
Absolutely.
I'm glad this lawsuit has been brought and the trial is on.
It's really good to see it.
Absolutely. So, Rolf, when is the next day? Is the court going to be in session tomorrow or?
No, it won't. It'll be Tuesday the 13th.
Tuesday the 13th. So, U.S. tech workers, we will be back on on Tuesday the 13th. You're 3 hours behind me. I'm on East Coast time. You're on West Coast time. So as soon as we have our chat, I will edit and get that video up. Well, Rolf, I want to thank you so much for covering that trial, bringing us those insights, and looking forward to talking to you again on Tuesday.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Thank you, Rolf.